I cheated on my husband once in 2008. He never raised his voice about it. He just stopped touching me for 18 years. 2 people, 1 house, a silence you could set a clock by. I was 58 in a doctor's office for a routine checkup when a woman with gold-rimmed glasses asked me one question. Not long after, my son was on an operating table, and a stranger with a clipboard told me something that made 18 years of silence look almost merciful. Here's what happened, in the order it happened. Michael and I met in college and married right after graduation, quickly, comfortably, without asking each other too many hard questions. He became an engineer at a manufacturing firm. I taught English at the local high school. We had 1 son, Jake. Our life was stable and quiet, like a glass of lukewarm water. No waves, no passion either. For a long time I told myself steady was its own kind of good fortune. Then, the summer I turned 40, Jake left for college. I stood in his doorway after we'd loaded the car, looking at the bare mattress and the tape marks where his posters used to be. The house wasn't just empty of furniture, it was empty of a reason to keep performing the version of myself that had been a mother first for 18 years straight. Michael was 42. Something in the house had gone quiet, in a way that had nothing to do with square footage. That was the year I met Ethan. He was the new art teacher, 5 years younger than me, with fine lines that crinkled at his eyes when he smiled. He kept fresh flowers on his desk and hummed songs I didn't recognize while grading papers. Once I watched him give his umbrella to a student caught in the rain, laughing as he walked to his car soaked through. He reminded me of a girl I used to be, 20 years earlier, one who cried over poems instead of grading essays under fluorescent light. One afternoon, he walked into my classroom holding a watercolor, a hillside covered in wildflowers. "Susan, what do you think of this one?" "It's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. "Then it's yours," he said, handing it over. "I think you're like the wildflowers in this painting, quiet, but with a life force all your own." I didn't say anything back. I didn't need to. That single sentence unlocked a door in me I'd bolted shut 20 years earlier. After that, we found reasons to be in the same room. The faculty lounge, the little garden behind the school, a coffee shop where nobody from our lives ever went. None of it was an accident. I knew exactly what I was arranging, and I arranged it anyway. Because being seen like that, really seen, after 20 years of being a fixture in someone else's house, felt like rain landing on ground that had forgotten it could still take water in. Michael noticed before I admitted anything to myself. "You're working late a lot recently," he said one evening, not turning from the television. "Just a lot to do at school," I said, and hurried past him into the bedroom. He didn't press. He just sat there in the blue glow of the TV. That silence made me feel guilty. It also, God forgive me, made me bolder. It came apart on a weekend. I told Michael I had a faculty workshop out of town. What I'd actually arranged was a day sketching in the countryside with Ethan. We spent the afternoon by a lake, talking about poetry, about art, about the life I used to imagine before I settled for the one I had. I remember thinking, even as I did it, that I'd have to pay for this afternoon somehow. I just didn't know how the bill would come due. As dusk fell, Ethan took my hand. "Susan, His sentence never finished, because a voice behind us said, "Mom?" I turned. Jake was standing a short distance off, his face pale with fury. Next to him stood Michael. My husband's face was a blank mask, his eyes fixed only on me. My mind went white. "Home," was the only word Michael said, before he turned and walked back to the car. Jake had come home to surprise me. When I didn't answer my phone for hours, he'd asked his father to drive him to the places I usually went. They found me at the lake, with another man's hand halfway to mine. I've thought about that 1,000 times since, that my own son was the one who went looking, and found the thing that would cost him a father who wasn't his father, though none of us knew that part yet. The ride back was terrifyingly silent. Jake sat in the back seat radiating disappointment without saying a word. It felt like a knife turning in my chest, worse than any shouting could have. Michael drove with both hands locked on the wheel and never once looked at me in the mirror. When we got home, he sent Jake straight to his room. Then he did something I hadn't expected. He sat down on the sofa and he lit a cigarette. I knelt in front of him. "I'm sorry," I said. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." "How long?" he said. Not a question, a demand, flat and quiet. 3 months, I sobbed. "But nothing happened, I swear, we just talked." "Enough." He stubbed out the cigarette. "Susan, I'm giving you two choices. One, we divorce. You walk away with nothing. Two, we stay married, but from this day forward, we are roommates, not husband and wife." I stared at him, stunned. "Jake has his whole life ahead of him," he went on, his voice flat as a man reading terms off a contract. "I don't want this touching him, and a divorce wouldn't do your career any favors either. So, choose. If you say no, we get the papers drawn up tomorrow." "I agree," I heard myself whisper. My own voice sounded like it belonged to somebody else. He nodded once, like a man confirming a measurement, then walked into our bedroom. He came back out with his pillow and a comforter and dropped them onto the sofa. "From now on, I sleep out here," he said. "Your life is your own. But in front of our son and everyone else, you will act like a normal wife. Are we clear?" I said yes. He didn't say another word that night. I lay alone in our king-size bed, listening to him toss on the sofa through the wall. I had braced myself for him to scream, to hit something, to demand answers over and over until I broke. He did none of that. He simply shut me out of his world, calmly and completely, and went to sleep. That was the first night I understood some punishments are far crueler than a divorce. A divorce ends. This didn't feel like it was ever going to end. The next morning, Michael got up and went to work like it was any ordinary Tuesday. I called in sick because I couldn't face Ethan across a hallway. I sent him 4 words. "I'm sorry. We can't see each other again." He wrote back 1 word. "Okay." Just like that, the affair was over. What I didn't understand yet was that my marriage to Michael was over too. It just wasn't going to have the decency to end. In the months that followed, we settled into a strange, cold peace. He made coffee every morning, but wouldn't speak while he drank it. He came home exactly on time, then disappeared into his study until he was sure I was asleep, and only then came out to the couch. We were punctual with each other. We were polite with each other. To the neighbors, a normal married couple. Inside the house, 2 people who happened to share a mortgage and a wedding date. That Christmas, Jake came home from college and looked at me like a stranger. "What do you want for dinner?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. "Whatever," he said, and shut himself in his room. At the table, the 3 of us sat in silence, broken only by a holiday movie on the television. "Jake, have some more turkey," I said, reaching to fill his plate. He pulled it away without looking up. "Dad, how are things at the firm?" he asked, pointedly ignoring me. "Fine," Michael said. "Good." Jake set down his fork. "I'm full. Go into my room." Watching my son walk away, I started to cry. "Stop crying," Michael said flatly, not looking at me. "Save your energy. We're at your mother's tomorrow." I wiped my eyes, and a chilling thought settled into place. This was going to be my life now, playing happy families for the world and living as strangers the moment the door closed behind us. I didn't yet know how many Christmases that sentence was going to have to cover. In 2011, Jake graduated with his master's and took a job in Chicago. The house, already quiet, went quieter still. I tried in those years to mend what I'd broken. I learned to cook Michael's favorite meals from scratch. I bought him thoughtful gifts for no occasion at all. I waited up for him with a snack on the nights he worked late. He remained a wall. My efforts just bounced off him and landed back at my feet. "You don't have to do this," he said one night, watching me set a plate in front of him. "We're just acting. You understand that, right?" "But I want to make it up to you," I said, my voice breaking. "Some things can't be fixed," he cut me off. "Susan, I gave you a respectable way out. Just live your life, and don't make me regret my decision." In that moment, I finally understood. He didn't not hate me. He'd buried the hate so deep, it had frozen solid. And ice doesn't need to raise its voice to cut you. In 2013, Jake married a lovely, kind woman named Sarah. At the reception, Michael and I stood side by side, smiling, giving toasts. Your parents have such a wonderful marriage, a guest said to me, beaming. Michael put his arm around my shoulder right on cue, his smile completely natural. I could feel his hand against my back the whole time, stiff and cold as a rock left out overnight. Later in the hotel room, the second the door clicked shut, his arm dropped away like it had never been there. That was exhausting, wasn't it? He said with something close to a sneer. Yes, it was, I said, sitting on the bed, feeling the absurdity of the day settle over me. Michael, how much longer do we have to keep this up? Until we can't anymore, he said, lying down on the small hotel sofa instead of the bed. I'm used to it. 2 words. They landed harder than anything he'd said since that first night. In 2015, our grandson was born. Michael gave him his name, Noah. With a grandchild in the world, we found a few new things to talk about that weren't the wreckage between us. Noah's first steps, which toys to send for his birthday, laughing, actually laughing during video calls. That kid looks just like Jake did, Michael said one day, unprompted. The first personal, unsolicited thing he'd said to me in years. Really? I asked, testing the ground under my feet. Was Jake this smiley as a baby? Yeah, he said, and nothing more. It was small, but it gave me a sliver of something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Hope. That Thanksgiving, Jake's family came to visit, and for once, the mood in the house was warm instead of careful. Mom, Dad, are you two doing okay, health-wise? Sarah asked, genuine concern in her voice. We're great, I said, and I actually smiled saying it. That's good, Sarah said, glancing between us. Honestly, I've always admired you two. Married this long and still so in love. For one unguarded second, I thought maybe we'd actually gotten somewhere. I was about to find out how wrong that was. Jake slammed his fork down. Mom, stop acting, he said, cold and level. Sarah doesn't know, but I do. You two haven't been husband and wife for years. You're putting on a show for everyone. The air went still. Jake, Michael said, low, warning. Dad, you stop too. Jake stood. I'm 28, not a child. Do you have any idea how suffocating it's been watching you two live like this? Did you think I couldn't see it? Sarah looked horrified, tugging at his sleeve. What are you talking about? Sarah, I'm sorry, Jake said, turning to his wife. My parents' marriage is a sham. They've stayed together for appearances. I stood, tears already welling. Jake! Mom, don't cry, he said, softening for a second. I know you regret it. I know you've been trying to make up for it for years. But what about Dad? Has he been happy? Have you ever once asked him that? I had nothing to say because he was right. What's the point of going on like this? Jake asked, looking between the two of us. It would be better to just divorce and start over. Dad's only 47. You're only 47. You both have a lot of life left. That's enough, Michael said, rising. Eat your dinner. Nobody touched their food again that night. But Jake had said out loud what I'd been too afraid to say to myself, and I couldn't unhear it. Jake's words planted a seed I couldn't pull out again. He was right. What were Michael and I doing besides slowly torturing each other for the rest of our lives? But I was too afraid to bring up a divorce myself. I was terrified of losing what little I had left, of my family, of Michael, even if all he ever gave me now was coldness. Coldness, I told myself, was still something. I wasn't ready to find out what nothing felt like. In 2017, I turned 50. The school threw me a small party. Susan, how come your husband isn't here? One of the younger teachers asked. He's stuck at work, I said, smiling through it. The truth was that Michael had no idea it was my birthday. He hadn't acknowledged the date in years, not since the year everything changed. There was a plate on the kitchen table when I got home, 2 pancakes still warm. Eat, Michael said, for your birthday. Buttermilk with blueberries, my favorite. Tears started falling before I could stop them. You remembered? I just remember the date, he said flatly. Don't read too much into it. This was the first thing he'd made for me in a decade. Michael, my voice broke, is there any chance for us? He was quiet so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Some things are in the past for a reason. He turned toward his study. They'll get cold if you wait. I ate every last bite. They were salty, and I couldn't tell you if that was the batter or my own face. Our 30th anniversary came in 2018. Jake insisted on celebrating. 30 years is the pearl anniversary, Mom, and booked us a nice restaurant. Sarah held Noah while Jake raised his glass. To Mom and Dad, thank you for everything you've done these past 30 years. May you always be this happy together. Michael and I clinked glasses and drank. Jake, the truth is, your mother and I, Michael started. Dad, I know, Jake interrupted gently. But no matter what's happened between you two, in my heart, you are the most important people in my life. Michael didn't say another word. He just quietly finished his wine. That night we lay in our separate spaces, me in the bedroom, him on the couch, the door a physical version of the wall between us. Michael, I called into the dark. Yeah, his voice came back. 30 years, I said, my voice thin. Have you hated me for 30 years? The silence stretched so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. I don't hate you, he finally said. I'm just tired. Tired. That word broke something in me that hate never could have. I'm sorry, I whispered, tears running into the pillow. Don't say sorry, he said, suddenly loud in the dark. It's all in the past. But it wasn't, was it? It was right there in the room with us. The pandemic hit in 2020. We were both retired now, stuck at home together, and we saw more of each other than we had in the previous 10 years combined. We cooked together. We watched the news. We followed the case numbers like a shared project. For a moment, it almost felt like we were a real couple again. Wear your mask, he'd say before heading to the grocery store, and I'd watch him leave from the doorway. That small, ordinary concern making my chest ache, with a hope I knew better than to trust. I let myself trust it anyway. One night I made a special dinner and opened wine. What's the occasion? Michael asked, sitting down. No reason. I just felt like a nice meal with you, I said, pouring his glass. He took a sip, watching me. Michael, I took a breath. Can we try again? For real this time? He set his glass down slowly. A bitter smile touched his mouth. Try again? Susan, do you think this is a game you can just hit reset on? I know I was wrong. You were wrong? He cut me off. Do you have any idea what these last 18 years have been like for me? Lying on that couch every night, listening to you breathe in the next room, asking myself why I keep torturing myself. Then why didn't you divorce me? I cried. Because I didn't want to hurt Jake. Because I didn't want to be the subject of town gossip. Because I didn't want you humiliated at your job. His eyes were red now. But you? Did you ever once think about how I felt? What it did to me, seeing you with that man? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, was all I could say, the words losing their meaning with every repeat. Stop saying sorry, he said, standing. Let's just keep things the way they are. That night I threw the entire dinner in the trash, and my last real shred of hope along with it. By 2024, Noah was 9. Grandma, what were you and Grandpa like when you were young? He asked, climbing into my lap. Oh, Grandpa was very handsome, and Grandma was very pretty, I said, stroking his hair. How did you meet? In college. Grandpa chased Grandma for a very long time. Does Grandpa still like Grandma now? The question caught me flat-footed. Of course he does, I said, with a smile that cost me more than he could know. I don't think Grandpa likes Grandma very much, Noah said, tilting his head, entirely without malice. He never holds your hand, and you don't sleep together. Noah, Sarah said, coming over quickly. Don't say things like that. I'm not lying, Noah said, reasonable about it. My teacher said people who love each other hold hands and hug. Time to do your homework, Jake said, steering his son away. I sat on the couch after they'd left, my heart a small, hollow space. Even a 9-year-old, with no reason to be looking for it, had seen in 30 seconds what I'd spent 16 years dressing up for company. In 2025, I turned 58 and retired. My old school district organized a health screening for retirees, blood tests, an x-ray, an ultrasound. You're in great shape, Mrs. Miller, the nurse told me, smiling. A little anemic, maybe. Eat some more spinach. I laughed and took my results down the hall to the gynecologist for a follow-up, with no idea I was walking toward the end of the only story about myself I'd ever believed. Dr. Evans, how do my results look? I sat in the sterile quiet of her office, my fingers twisting the strap of my purse. Sunlight came through the blinds in neat stripes across the wall. She was in her 50s, kind-looking, gold-rimmed glasses, staring at her screen with her brow furrowed. Mrs. Miller, you're 58 this year, is that correct? Yes, I just retired. Is something wrong? She paused, then looked at me with a complicated expression. Susan, I need to ask you a rather personal question. Have you and your husband maintained a normal, intimate life over the years? My face went hot. The question found the oldest, most secret wound I had. It does, she said, pointing at her screen. Have to do with your checkup. I'm seeing some abnormal indicators. I hesitated, then told her the truth. My husband and I, we haven't been intimate in 18 years. She looked surprised, then sighed. 18 years. Do you know the physical impact that can have? Hormonal imbalance, a weakened immune system, higher risk for certain diseases, and psychologically, a real toll. I looked down at my hands. It's my fault. I wronged him. She looked at me with something close to pity. I need to do a more detailed exam. Do you have time today? I lay back on the cold table while she moved the instrument over my abdomen, her eyes fixed on the monitor. Then suddenly she stopped. Susan, she said, her voice trembling slightly, have you ever had any gynecological surgery? No, never, I said, my heart starting to pound. Why? She didn't answer right away. She just kept working, quiet, while a cold feeling spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the table. You can get dressed. Let's talk in my office. She handed me a cup of water once I was seated. Susan, the exam shows evidence you've had surgery on your uterus. That's impossible, I said. I've never had surgery. The results are very clear. She turned the monitor toward me. You see this? Distinct scar tissue. She paused, her face growing more serious. Based on the location and formation, this was likely done many years ago. Susan, are you absolutely sure you have no memory of this? My mind was a chaotic blur. Surgery? What surgery? When? Could it be a mistake? I asked, grasping for the last straw of hope I had. No, she said, shaking her head. The imaging is too clear. I'd suggest you go home and think very carefully, or perhaps ask a family member. I walked out in a daze, her words on a loop. Surgery, scar tissue, many years ago. Then, through the fog, a thought pierced all the way through. Back in 2008, right after Ethan, I'd gone through a period of severe anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I was taking sleeping pills most nights just to get through them. And I actually remembered, once I let myself look at it, waking one morning with a dull ache low in my abdomen, which I dismissed at the time as cramps. Could it be? The more I turned it over, the more the ground under me seemed to tilt. I hailed a cab and rushed home, my heart going faster than the meter. Michael was in the living room reading the paper when I came through the door. You're back, he said without looking up. I stood in front of him. Michael, I need to ask you something, and you have to tell me the truth. He finally looked up, his brow creasing at whatever he saw in my face. What is it? In 2008, did I have surgery? The color drained out of him all at once. He shot to his feet, and the newspaper slid off his lap. My heart sank like a stone dropped in a lake. So it was true. Something had happened to me, and I hadn't even known. What kind of surgery was it? I said, my voice shaking. Why don't I remember any of it? He turned his back to me, his shoulders working like he was holding something down with both hands. Do you really want to know? He said low. Tell me! I nearly screamed it. He was quiet a long moment. Then he turned around and his eyes were red-rimmed and raw in a way I had never once seen on it. That year after I found out about your affair, one night, You took too many sleeping pills. His voice shook. I rushed you to the hospital to have your stomach pumped. While they were examining you, the doctor discovered you were pregnant. My brain buzzed. The room actually tilted. Pregnant? I was pregnant. Whose baby was it? I could barely get the question out. Michael gave a broken, bitter laugh. The doctor said you were 3 months along. His own tears fell. Susan, do the math. We hadn't touched each other in half a year by then. My legs went out from under me and I collapsed onto the sofa. 3 months, 6 months without him. The baby was Ethan's. I was really pregnant? I still couldn't make myself believe it. And the baby? What happened to the baby? Michael closed his eyes, tears sliding down his face. I had the doctor perform an abortion, he said, his voice sounding dragged up from somewhere deep. While you were unconscious, I signed the consent form. I had them take the child. My mind went white and empty. I had carried Ethan's child, and Michael had ended that pregnancy while I lay there with no idea any of it was happening. How could you? I whispered. How could I? Michael roared. You have the nerve to ask me how I could? Susan, you were carrying another man's child. What was I supposed to do? Let you give birth to it? Let the whole world know my wife cheated on me and was carrying his baby? Every word landed like a blade. But that was a life, I said. A life? He sneered. When you were cheating, did you ever once think about the life of our family? Did you ever think that Jake needed a whole, happy home? I had no answer. He was right. It was all my fault. Then why didn't you tell me? I sobbed. Why did you hide it from me? Tell you? He wiped his eyes roughly. So you could feel guilty? So you could suffer? So you could hate me even more? I wouldn't hate you. You would, he cut me off. You'd hate me for taking away your right to be a mother, for making that choice while you were unconscious and couldn't say no. So I chose not to tell you. I thought you'd never find out. I thought the secret would just get buried with time. But I know now, I screamed, coming apart. I know. Do you understand? I know. Michael looked at me, his face a mix of pain and pure exhaustion. Yes, you know, he said, his voice dropping. So what now? What do you want to do? Do you want to hate me or forgive me? He stepped closer, his voice climbing again. Or maybe you want to go find that man and tell him he once had a child. No, I said. Just pretend you don't know, he said, turning away. We can keep living like this. I can't, I yelled. Then what do you want? He whipped back around. A divorce? Fine, let's go right now and file the papers. I froze. Was this really it? After everything? In one afternoon? That was the exact moment his phone rang. His face changed the instant he answered. What? Jake's been in an accident? My heart seized. Okay, we're on our way. He hung up and looked at me, his face gone completely ashen. Jake was in a car accident. He's in surgery. Nothing else in the world existed after that sentence. I scrambled after him out the door, leaving the pregnancy, the abortion, the whole conversation on the living room floor behind us, like something we'd have to step over later. Michael gripped the wheel the whole way, his knuckles white under the streetlights. He'll be okay, I said, my voice trembling. Jake will be okay. He didn't answer. He just pressed harder on the gas. Sarah was standing outside the emergency room holding Noah, her eyes swollen from crying. Mom, Dad, she sobbed when she saw us. Jake? He was hit by a car, she said, saving a little kid who ran into the street. My knees buckled, and Michael caught me before I hit the floor. He walked straight to the surgeon coming through the doors. Doctor, how is my son? The surgeon pulled his mask down, his face grave. The patient is seriously injured. We're doing everything we can. He paused. He's lost a lot of blood and needs an immediate transfusion. He has a rare blood type and our bank is low. Rare blood type, Michael said. What type? B negative, the doctor said. It's very uncommon. Does anyone in the family share it? A direct donation would be fastest. Michael and I looked at each other. I'm O positive, Michael said. I'm O positive too, I stammered. The doctor flipped through the chart, then stopped moving entirely. Wait, genetically, if both parents are type O, it's impossible for their child to be type B. The air in that hallway turned to ice. I looked at Michael. His face had gone deathly white. Are you both certain? The doctor asked, confused. Certain, Michael said in a voice that had gone somewhere very far away. The doctor frowned, about to say more, when the operating room doors burst open. We need a family member, a nurse called out. The patient is critical. We need blood now. I'll contact the blood bank again, the surgeon said, turning. Wait, Sarah said suddenly. I'm B negative. Take mine. The doctor nodded. We'll prep you immediately. She followed him through the doors, leaving Noah with me. I held my grandson and felt nothing in my whole body except my own heartbeat. Michael stood frozen in the corridor, his eyes locked on the doors to the OR. Michael, I said, going to his side. Don't talk, he said, colder than I'd ever heard him, even 18 years ago on that first terrible night. Not until Jake is out of surgery. So I didn't. We stood there together and apart for 2 hours. The light above the OR finally went out. The surgeon came through, pulling off his mask. The surgery was a success. He's stable, but we'll need to monitor him in the ICU. We all breathed at once. Sarah, pale from giving blood, asked weakly, How's Jake? He's okay, I said, hugging her. Thank you. Jake was moved to the ICU. We could only see him through the glass, pale and still, hooked up to tubes and wires. Jake, I whispered, my vision blurring. Michael stood beside me, silent as a statue, and I had no idea the statue was about to crack wide open. That night, Sarah took Noah home to rest. It was just Michael and me in the empty corridor. Susan, he finally said, his voice carrying a despair I had never once heard from him in 30 years. Tell me, is Jake my son? My heart stopped. What are you saying? The doctor said it. We're both type O. Jake can't be type B. He turned to face me, his eyes full of anguish. So I'm asking you, is Jake my biological son? Of course he is, I said, frantic. Of course he's your son. Then explain the blood type. I don't know, I said, my mind racing. Maybe the hospital made a mistake, a genetic mutation. Do you really believe that? He said with a cold laugh. Susan, when you cheated on me, Jake was already in college. So if he's not my son, that means you lied to me from the very beginning, from 30 years ago. No, I said, grabbing his arm. It's not true, Michael. Believe you? He shook my hand off. You didn't even know you were pregnant with another man's child. How am I supposed to believe you now? But Jake is your son, I sobbed. Look at him. He looks just like you. Like me? His own tears fell now. Susan, do you know what my proudest accomplishment has been for 30 years? Having a son like Jake. And now you're telling me he might not even be mine. He is. He has to be. Just then the ICU door opened. A doctor stepped out. The patient is awake. He's asking for you. Jake lay in the bed, looking weakly up at us. Dad, Mom. His voice was faint. Jake, I said, squeezing his hand. How are you feeling? Okay. He looked at Michael, his eyes pleading with him about something before he'd even said it. Dad, I have something to tell you. Michael moved to the bedside, his own eyes red. What is it, son? Jake took a shaking breath and summoned everything he had left to say one sentence. Dad, I've always known. I'm not your real son. The doctor's words that afternoon had made my world collapse. This was the final blow on top of it. Jake closed his eyes, exhausted. The heart monitor kept its steady beep, a funeral rhythm in the quiet room. Michael stumbled back and hit the wall, his face ghost white, his mouth moving without sound. A nurse said gently, The patient needs to rest. Perhaps you should step outside. I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching 30 years of a man's certainty come apart in real time. What do you mean? Michael finally managed, his voice raw and unrecognizable. Jake opened his eyes again, staring at the ceiling, his voice thin as paper. My senior year of high school, I was cleaning out the study. I found your old medical files, my birth certificate. My blood type was listed as B negative, but the school health screening said I was B positive. My mind went back unwillingly to that health screening. Jake coming home pale, saying he was catching a cold. That was 2006. He was 17. I secretly had a paternity test done, Jake whispered, a single tear tracing down his temple. The probability of paternity was less than 0.1%. He turned his head slightly toward his father. Dad, I'm not your son. Michael's legs gave out from under him, and he crumpled into the chair beside the bed. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking violently. It was the first time in 18 years I had seen him truly break. Not the silent, controlled tears I knew, but real, gut-wrenching sobs. That sound hurt me worse than any accusation he could have made. He lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, and pinned me with a stare. Who? He said. Who was it? I opened my mouth and no sound came out. Who? I don't know, I stammered. I really don't know. I went looking through the years in my head. A college boyfriend, but we'd broken up 6 months before the wedding. After we married, I was faithful, until Ethan, and that was 20 years in. There was no possible way Jake could be Ethan's son, which left exactly one gap. One night I had spent 30 years not looking at directly. Michael, I began, each word coming out like a shard of glass. Before the wedding, I remember now. My bachelorette party. I drank too much. The memories are a blur. A face I had almost completely forgotten surfaced out of the dark. Mark Peterson, your best friend, our best man. The week before our wedding, he moved to Europe for a job, and we never heard from him again. We'd barely even spoken since. Michael shot to his feet, his eyes shifting from despair into a terrifying clarity, then into pure rage. Mark! He spat the name out like poison. It was him, wasn't it? I couldn't deny it. The timeline fit. The blood type fit. Mark was B negative. I'd overheard it once at a party years and years ago, filed away in a part of my mind I never expected to need again. You too, Michael said, his voice trembling. Before my wedding, in my own home. I was drunk, I cried, collapsing. The night before the rehearsal, I was so nervous. I drank too much. He brought me home. I don't remember any of it. I swear I thought it was just a bad dream. Did he force you? Michael asked, and his voice nearly broke on the question. I didn't have an answer for that either. I don't remember enough to say yes or no, I told him. That's the part I can't live with. I can't tell you I fought him, and I can't tell you I didn't. I don't have the memory to ask myself that question with. I've spent 30 years not being able to ask it, and not able to stop wondering. So you married me carrying another man's child, Michael said, and laughed, a raw, horrifying sound with nothing funny in it. 28 years, Susan. You lied to me for 28 years. I raised my best friend's son. I made him my pride and joy. I gave him everything I had. You've made me the biggest joke in the world, and I didn't even get to know it. I didn't know, I said, falling to my knees, grabbing at his pants leg. Michael, I swear I didn't know. My period was always irregular. I just thought it was late. If I had known, I never would have. Never would have what? He looked down at me, his eyes cold as a frozen lake in January. Never would have married me, or never would have had him? I had no answer. I sat with the question, and I still don't have one. What would I have done back then if I'd known? In those days, being an unwed mother was a shame that followed a woman for the rest of her life. And Michael had been so good to me, so sincere. I chose the version of the story where I got to keep both of them. I just never knew I was choosing. Get out, Michael said, turning his back on me. I don't want to see you. Michael, get out, he roared, his voice cracking apart with a rage he had been holding down for 18 years and then some. I staggered to my feet and stumbled out of the ICU into the corridor, bathed in harsh, sterile light. I leaned against the wall and slid all the way down to the floor and buried my face in my knees. For 30 years, I had believed my affair was the greatest sin of my life, a debt I would spend the rest of my years repaying. Now I understood It had only ever been an aftershock, a cruel, ironic echo. The original sin had been committed before the story even began, before the wedding march played, in a night I couldn't remember and couldn't undo. And I, the sinner, had lived in blissful ignorance, stealing 28 years of a man's life without ever meaning to. I don't know how long I sat there before someone sat down beside me. It was Sarah. "Mom, Jake told me everything," she said softly. "No matter what the blood test says, you will always be his only mother, and Dad will always be his only father." I looked up at her sad face. "Sarah, don't you hate me?" She shook her head. "Hate won't change anything. Jake needs you both. Noah needs his grandparents. Some things can't be undone, but we can still choose how we face what comes next." Her words were a lifeline. I still couldn't quite reach for it. 2 days later, Jake was moved to a regular room. Michael stayed by his side constantly, speaking to no one unless necessary, least of all to me. He looked at me like I was a stranger, worse than a stranger, like the person who had betrayed his entire world. I brought meals and clean clothes every day, but only lingered outside, watching through the glass. I'd see Michael sitting by the bed, holding Jake's hand, the two of them talking low. I could see the tears on Jake's face, Michael's red-rimmed eyes trying to hold himself together. A father and son whose bond ran deeper than blood, and I was the one who had nearly destroyed it. A week later, Jake was discharged. We didn't go back to our own house. We went to Jake and Sarah's place in Chicago. They gave the master bedroom to Jake to recover in, and put Michael and me in the guest room. We were under the same roof again, and 1,000 miles apart at the same time. That first night, I heard a sound out on the balcony. I pushed open the sliding door and found Michael standing there, a cigarette glowing between his fingers, looking out at the city. He'd quit smoking over a decade ago. "Michael," I said softly. He didn't turn around. He just took a long drag and exhaled slowly. "Susan, I've been thinking," he said, unnervingly calm. "I wanted to hate you. I wanted to kill you. I wanted to burn everything down and end it all." My chest clenched into a tight knot, waiting. But Jake said to me, he turned, the ember lighting his face in the dark, "Dad, for the last 28 years, the love you gave me was real, and the love I gave you was real. That's enough." The winter wind picked up, and I hugged myself against it, waiting for whatever he was about to hand down to me. "So I've decided to let you go," Michael said, crushing the cigarette against the railing, "and to let myself go too." "Can we?" I choked out. "Can we go back?" "Go back?" He laughed, a sound hollowed out by exhaustion. "Every single day of our past was built on a lie. There's no going back, Susan." "Then what do we do?" He was silent a long time. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn blew, long and lonely. "Jake needs time to heal," he said slowly. "Noah is still young. He needs a complete family. So we'll keep acting," he said, "just like we have for 18 years. In public, we're a loving couple, Jake's parents, Noah's grandparents. And at home?" I asked, my voice shaking. He looked at me, his eyes completely empty now. "At home, we're roommates, just roommates. This time, for real." He turned and went back inside, leaving me alone on the cold balcony, understanding this sentence was somehow worse than the one he'd handed me 18 years earlier. Because this time, I had no right to argue with it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I remembered him saying nearly the same thing 18 years before, and realized now that hadn't been the worst possible outcome after all. This was a version where even hate would have been a luxury, replaced by the tired, mechanical motions of a partnership neither of us had chosen the terms of. But this time, I had no right to complain, no right to even feel sad about it. I told myself over and over that I deserved this. The days passed. Jake recovered slowly, started working from home. Noah would run in from school, first into his grandfather's arms, then into mine, and the sound of his laughter was the only truly warm thing left in that house. Michael was polite and distant with me. "Thank you," and "excuse me." If I coughed, he'd silently pass me a glass of water. But there was no eye contact anymore, No unnecessary words. We were two people performing the roles of a happy couple, and doting grandparents so well that only a 9-year-old had ever caught the seam. Sometimes late at night I would hear a muffled cough from his side of the room, or a heavy sigh through the wall. I would lie in the dark and picture him, a man who had been proud his whole life, now forced to swallow this new humiliation and grief alone every single night in private. And I didn't have the right to knock on that door and tell him I was sorry. I'd used up that right a long time before I even knew I had it. Christmas came, and we went back to our hometown. Family and friends filled the house with noise and laughter. "Michael and Susan, you two are still so in love," my cousin said wistfully. 30 years and you look as happy as newlyweds." Michael smiled and put his arm around my shoulder, a gesture so practiced by now it looked completely natural. "Yep," he said, "she's the one for me." I leaned into him, smelling the faint scent of tobacco on his shirt. He'd started smoking again. His arm was strong and steady, but I understood by then its strength wasn't there to hold me up. It was there to hold up an entire world, one bad moment away from shattering in front of everyone in the room. At dinner, Jake stood to give a toast. "Mom, Dad, thank you for everything you've done for this family. I love you." Michael raised his glass and drank the whole thing in one go. I took a sip of my own wine and it caught in my throat, and I started to cough. Michael reached over and gently patted my back, the gesture tender, automatic, while his eyes stayed fixed somewhere far away that had nothing to do with the room. In that moment, I understood something I hadn't let myself understand before. Some punishments aren't loud arguments, and they aren't cold shoulders either. They're a gentle distance, a hand on your back that's only there to hold up an appearance. After the holidays, we went back to Chicago, and life went on down its seemingly peaceful path until one afternoon in March. "Susan," Michael called from the study, "sit down, we need to talk." I sat, my heart pounding with a dread I couldn't name yet. Sunlight streamed through the window behind him, casting dappled shadows across his face. "I've booked a flight to Oregon for next week," he said calmly. "By myself." My stomach dropped. "For how long?" "I don't know, a month, maybe longer." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I need some time to be alone, to think." "What about the family?" "Jake's fine now. Sarah's here for Noah." He paused. "You take care of yourself." I knew this was a farewell, even if it wasn't wearing the word. Not a divorce, not a final break. A long, slow escape that had actually started the moment he'd learned the truth. "Michael," I said, finding the courage to stop him as he turned to go. If time could go back to the night before the wedding, I would." "Don't say if," he cut me off, his voice worn all the way through. "In the last 30 years, you've said if too many times. Time only moves forward, Susan. The mistakes we've made, the wounds we've caused, they're carved into our bones now. All we can do is carry them and keep walking." He reached the door, then stopped, his back still to me. "When I get back, we'll talk about what comes next." The door closed softly behind him. I sat in the study a long time, staring out at the bright spring day, tears falling silently. I didn't know if he would come back or what next meant. But this time, I wasn't praying for forgiveness. I wasn't hoping to go back. 18 years ago, I thought the worst punishment was him no longer touching me. Now I understood that was only the prelude. The real punishment was the truth coming to light, and the wall it built between two people who used to look at each other without flinching. On either side of that wall stand two people changed by time and by lies, some mine, some older than I knew to look for. I will spend the rest of my life paying a debt I incurred 30 years ago, in a night I still can't fully claim as my own. This is my story's ending for now, and I intend to keep walking.